Hello, my friends. I'm so proud of myself, pat myself on the back because this is 3 nights or 3 days in a row that I've come on for live read because I keep hearing this book calling and I have new students saying, please read this book, please read that book. And I'm like, I haven't finished this dang Tale of Two Cities. So I'm just pushing myself every day to come on, get online and get reading. So let's read. And just in case, hi, Yara. Omi loves you. Shout out to your people, guys, because especially if you've got little ones in your life, they need that love and that relationship. So important. Those of you that are back to school, this has been an end of school, summer read, and now back to school, and I still don't have it finished yet. Chapter 3 of book 3, and this one is called The Shadow. Have you noticed that the titles always do really fit? Hey, Ellie. Glad you joined me. This is a short chapter, so I think I'll get it kicked out. Let's see how long for. Oh, I might do 3 and 4. Oh, Beanley, I love you. Are you my Green Bean? Is that a new name that I don't know, Beanley? Are you my bean? And then Maya, hi, and here's to my iced coffee that I make for myself. It's not Starbucks, but it's just as good. You got it to the All right, so we are in the part where Miss Pross has come with little Lucy. They're all in Paris to track down Charles Darnay. And we know that it's very, very dangerous. And we know that Dr. Manette has gone off to try and rescue Charles Darnay, who's in prison, and he's in solitary confinement. So one of the first considerations which arose in the business mind of Mr. Lorry when business hours came round was this, that he had no right to imperil Tellson's by sheltering the wife of an immigrant prisoner under the bank roof. You know, he's a rule follower. We know that about Mr. Lorry. His own possessions, safety, life, he would have hazarded for Lucy and her child without a moment's demur. But the great trust he held was not his own, and as to that business charge, he was a strict man of business. I want to mention here, without being a spoiler, that we'll see a thread, a theme woven through this story by Dickens of honor, what is honor, doing the right thing, even though it's not your personal preference, maybe it's not in your own best interest or your own personal wishes, but you still do the right thing. So if you've got an AP class or a teacher who really looks you to dig deep, I want to call attention to the fact that Mr. Lorry has sheltered and protected Manette and Lucy and little Lucy and Miss Pross, but he knows this place that they are is the property of Tellson's. And if for some reason the community saw them as nobility that should, at risk because of Darnay, who's in prison, that he can't let that happen. And so this is why he's going to act the way he is, not because he doesn't care about them, but because he is this man of honor and has to do the right thing. At first, his mind reverted to Defarge, and he thought of finding out the wine shop again and taking counsel with its master in reference to the safest dwelling place in the distracted state of the city. But the same consideration that suggested him repudiated him. So the same idea that made him think of, the same reason it made him think of Defarge is what makes him dismiss it immediately. He lived in the most violent quarter and doubtless was influential there and deep in its dangerous workings. So although Defarge should be the obvious place to go, the fact that he's so dangerous and sketchy makes Lorry not comfortable to use him. Noon coming and the doctor not returning and every minute's delay tending to compromise Tellson's, Mr. Lorry advised with Lucy. She said that her father had spoken of hiring a lodging for a short term in that quarter near the banking house. As there was no business objection to this, and as he foresaw that even if it were all well with Charles and he were to be released, he could not hope to leave the city. Mr. Lorry went out in quest of such a lodging and found a suitable one high up in a removed by street where the closed blinds and all the other windows of a high melancholy square of buildings marked deserted homes. To this lodging, he at once removed Lucy and her child and Miss Pross, giving them what comfort he could and much more than he had himself. He left Jerry with them as a figure to fill the doorway that would bear considerable knocking on the head and return to his own occupations. So they rent a place and they put Jerry as a guardian there at the door. A disturbed and doleful mind he brought to bear upon them, and slowly and heavily the day lagged on with him. It wore itself out and wore him out with it until the bank closed. He was again alone in his room of the previous night, considering what to do, when he heard a foot on the stair. In a few moments, a man stood in his presence who, with a keenly observant look at him, addressed him by his name. "Your servant," said Mr. Lorry. "Do you know me?" He was a strongly made man with dark curling hair, from 45 to 50 years of age. For answer, he repeated without any emphasis of the words, "Do you know me?" "I have seen you somewhere, perhaps at my wine." Now remember, always whenever this dark creature, or not creature, but the character, whenever he shows it with the dark hair, we know that's a clue that's Defarge. "Perhaps at my wine shop." Much interested and agitated, Mr. Lorry said, "You come from Dr. Manette?" "Yes, I come from Dr. Manette." "And what does he say? What does he send me?" Defarge gave into his anxious hand an open scrap of paper. It bore the words in the doctor's writing, "Charles is safe, but I cannot safely leave this place yet. I have obtained the favor that the bearer has a short note from Charles to his wife. Let the bearer see his wife." The bearer is Defarge. It was dated from La Force within an hour. "Will you accompany me," said Mr. Lorry, joyfully relieved after reading his note aloud, "to where his wife resides?" "Yes," returned Defarge, scarcely noticing as yet in what a curiously reserved and mechanical way Defarge spoke. Mr. Lorry put on his hat. Notice how Dickens weaves in a warning. He tells us Defarge is acting sketchy. Scarcely noticed, but Lorry doesn't notice it. What a curiously reserved and mechanical way, like, yes, okay, I will. Like, he's not warm, he's not human. There's something kind of off here. And Dickens is preparing us to accept a truth that comes later, but you don't notice it on a first read. You only, I don't remember making note of that, but somewhere those things are planted by a well practiced author. It was dated from La Force within an hour. Oh, I scarcely knew. They found two women, one knitting. "Madame Defarge, surely," said Mr. Lorry, who had left her in exactly the same attitude some 17 years ago. Realize how much time has passed. "It is she," observed her husband. "Does Madame go with us?" required Mr. Lorry, seeing that she moved as they moved. "Yes, that she may be able to recognize the faces and know the persons. It is for their safety." Beginning to be struck by Defarge's manner, Mr. Lorry looked dubiously, like, something's weird about you, dubiously, I don't know that I trust you, untrustingly, and led the way. Both the women followed, the second woman being the Vengeance. Remember, we heard about her before. I'm sorry, I'm so thirsty. They passed through the intervening streets as quickly as they might, ascended the staircase of the new domicile, were admitted by Jerry, and found Lucy weeping, alone. She was thrown into a transport by the tidings Mr. Lorry gave her of her husband, and clasped the hand that delivered his note, little thinking what it had been doing near him in the night, and might, but for a chance, have done to him. And she reads the note again. "Dearest, take courage. I am well." Oh, no, not again. This is a new note. We have a new note from Charles. "Dearest," he says, "take courage. I am well, and your father has influence around me. You cannot answer this. Kiss our child for me." So can you imagine the father? It has just a scrap of paper to write on, and he doesn't know that he'll ever see his family again. And this is, "I'm okay. Be strong. Your dad's taking care of everything, and take care of our daughter." Beanley says, "1,000 splendid suns a long time ago." Well, thank you for coming back. I love that. My daughter's nickname is Bean. So when I see, it's not just Bean, but there's her name I've said her name before. Her name is Shireen. So Shireen Bean. I don't know, something I did when she was little. So I thought you might have been her with a YouTube channel that I didn't recognize. But it's okay. I'm glad to have you as a reader. So imagine what emotions are running here that Lucy feels like, oh, I've heard from my husband, and mixed feelings about what that's going to be. That was all the writing. It was so much. However, to her who received it, that she turned from Defarge to his wife and kissed one of the hands that knitted. It was a passionate, loving, thankful, womanly action, but the hand made no response, dropped cold and heavy, and took to its knitting again. Again, Dickens is telegraphing to us what to expect from the Defarges. There was something in its touch that gave Lucy a check, like caught her attention. She stopped in the act of putting the note in her bosom, and with her hands yet at her neck, looked terrified at Madame Defarge. Madame Defarge met the lifted eyebrows and forehead with a cold, impassive stare. "My dear," said Mr. Lorry, striking in to explain, "there are frequent risings in the streets, and though it is not likely they will ever trouble you, Madame Defarge wishes to see those whom she has the power to protect at such times, to the end that she may know them, that she may identify them. I believe," said Mr. Lorry, rather haltingly in his reassuring words, as the stony manner of all the three impressed itself upon him more and more. "I state the case, Citizen Defarge. Is that right? Am I saying it right? Is that the reason?" Defarge looked gloomily at his wife and gave no other answer than a gruff sound of acquiescence, of agreement. "You had better, Lucy," said Lorry, doing all he could to propitiate by tone and manner, "have the dear child here, and our good Pross Defarge is an English lady and knows no French." The lady in question, whose rooted conviction that she was more than a match for any foreigner was not to be shaken by distress and danger, appeared with folded arms and observed in English to the Vengeance, whom her eyes first encountered, "Well, I am sure, Boldface, I hope you are pretty well." She also bestowed a British cough on Madame Defarge, but neither of the two took much heed of her. They look at her as this scrawny little lady, and they're like, we're not worried about her. "Is that his child?" said Madame Defarge, stopping in her work for the first time and pointing her knitting needle at little Lucy as if it were the finger of fate. "Yes, madame," answered Lorry. "This is our poor prisoner's darling daughter and only child." The shadow attendant on Madame Defarge and her party seemed to fall so threatening and dark on the child that her mother instinctively kneeled on the ground beside her. So the energy is menacing, and Lucy's like protectively kneels down to little Lucy. On both the mother and the child. "It is enough, my husband," said Madame Defarge. "I have seen them. We may go." But the suppressed manner had enough of menace in it, not visible and presented, but indistinct and withheld. She just has an instinct, an intuition that this woman is scary. To alarm Lucy into saying, as she laid her appealing hand on Madame Defarge's dress, "You will be good to my poor husband. You will do him no harm. You will help me to see him if you can." "Your husband is not my business here," returned Madame Defarge, looking down at her with perfect composure. "It is the daughter of your father who is my business here." It is the daughter, so it's you. What a circular way to say that. "For my sake, then, be merciful to my husband. For my child's sake. She will put her hands together and pray for you to be merciful. We are more afraid of you than of these others." Madame Defarge received it as a compliment and looked at her husband. Defarge, who had been uneasily biting his thumbnail and looking at her, he's like, oh man, he knows something we don't know. And looking at her, collected his face into a sterner expression, like he covered, I'm not scared. "What is it your husband says in that little letter?" asked Madame Defarge with a lowering smile. "Influence. He says something touching influence." "That my father," said Lucy, hurriedly taking the paper from her breast, but with her alarmed eyes on the questioner and not on it, "has much influence around him." So she's pretending to read it, and she doesn't take her eyes off Madame Defarge. Madame Defarge looked, no, I skipped. "Surely it will release him," said Madame Defarge. "Let it do so." His influence will release him. "As a wife and mother," cried Lucy most earnestly, "I implore you to have pity on me and not to exercise any power that you possess against my innocent husband, but to use it in his behalf. Oh, sister woman, think of me as a wife and mother." She's appealing to her from this maternal phase. But remember, I've warned you over and over, the fishmongers' wives saw their children die, these gruesome deaths of starvation or abuse, like the child that was under the wheels of the carriage. It's not her child, but we can presume that she's had some kind of suffering along these lines. Madame Defarge looked coldly as ever at the suppliant, at Lucy, and said, turning to her friend, the Vengeance, the wives and mothers we have been used to see since we were as little as this child, and much less, have not been greatly considered. She's like, what have we seen? Have we seen wives and mothers and children cared for in the life we've grown up in? We have known their husbands and fathers laid in prison and kept for them often enough. All our lives we have seen our sister women suffer in themselves and in their children, poverty, nakedness, hunger, thirst, sickness, misery, oppression, and neglect of all kinds, haven't we? We've seen all that, right? And she wants us to be sister, women to them. We've suffered. Where were you when we were suffering? We have seen nothing else, returned the Vengeance. We've borne this a long time, said Madame Defarge, turning her eyes again upon Lucy. Judge you. Is it likely that the trouble of one wife and mother would be much to us now? You think we care about you, lady? We've seen so much suffering. We couldn't do anything about it. Why do you think we're going to do anything for you? Courage, my dear Lucy. She resumed her knitting and went out. The Vengeance followed. Defarge went last and closed the door. Courage, my dear Lucy, said Mr. Lorry as he raised her. Courage, courage. So far, all goes well with us. Much, much better than it has of late gone with many poor souls. Cheer up and have a thankful heart. I am not thankless, I hope, but that dreadful woman seems to throw a shadow on me and all my hopes, like she's creeped out by her. Tut-tut, said Mr. Lorry. What is despondency in this brave little breast? A shadow indeed, no substance in it, Lucy. He's trying to get her, comfort her. But the shadow of the manner of these Defarges was dark upon himself for all that, and in his secret mind it troubled him greatly. Well, that 1724 was the end of chapter 3. Chapter 4 is fairly short. I've got time, so let's keep reading, because if we get chapter 4 done, then I think we only have 10 more chapters to go, because I think this only goes, we have 11 more chapters to go, which is 11 more days, which is basically another month at the rate I read, unless I can just really be disciplined to make myself do it. So let's read chapter 4, Calm in the Storm. So what was that last? Shadow. The shadow was the last chapter. Now we've got calm in the storm. So remember, pacing is such an important part of building the tension. So the tension is very built. We've gone to Paris. We're in the prison. We don't know what's going to happen. The scary people show up to kind of say, we're going to help you, but they don't feel like they're going to help us. So the tension is really built up. So the calm in the storm, the author is building in a moment where we can go, okay, I can relax a little bit. You'll see that in movies too, in scary movies. You'll see the tension, like murder mysteries and things. You'll see the tension build. And then there's some kind of comic relief, or the sun comes out in a dark, scary night. That's the structure of the plot. So chapter 4, Calm in the Storm. Somebody has written in here, a teacher that taught this before, questions. Did Dr. Manette return immediately? Was Charles Darnay among the living or the dead? What group did he watch? So there's some questions that whoever taught this last, this was not, I didn't teach it out of this book. So these are, and it's not my handwriting. So curious, let's see if we find those answers. Dr. Manette did not return until the morning of the 4th day of his absence. So no, he did not return immediately. So much of what had happened in that dreadful time as could be kept from the knowledge of Lucy was so well concealed from her that not until long afterwards, when France and she were far apart, did she know that 1,100 defenseless prisoners of both sexes and all ages had been killed by the populace. That 4 days and nights had been darkened by this deed of horror, and that the air around her had been tainted by the slain. She only knew that there had been an attack upon the prisons, that all political prisoners had been in danger, and that some had been dragged out of the crowd and murdered. Now, this is one of those things I want to teach you to notice. Let's look at that sentence again. So much had happened in that dreadful time as could be kept from the knowledge of Lucy. So all this, thousands of people dying, she didn't know at the time, but look what it says. That not until long afterwards, when France and she were apart, did she know. She finds out about this when she gets back, presumably to England. She and France are far apart. So we know she survives this for at least some time. So that's not a spoiler. That's just a way to read into it, go, oh, okay, we know at least Lucy gets out of here, right? She only knew that there had been an attack upon the prisons, that all political prisoners had been in danger, and that some had been dragged out with the crowd and murdered. So she learns that. To Mr. Lorry, the doctor communicated under an injunction of secrecy on which he had no need to dwell, that the crowd had taken him through a scene of carnage. Carnage is like murder and blood and, just craziness, like killing, bloody, massive killing, carnage. Where'd we go? Scene of carnage to the prison of La Force. That in the prison he had found a self-appointed tribunal sitting, kind of like a vigilante group, that they had become judge, jury, executioner, before which the prisoners were brought singly, and by which they were rapidly ordered to be put forth to be massacred or to be released, or in a few cases to be sent back to their cells. That presented by his conductors to this tribunal, he had announced himself by name and profession as having been for 18 years a secret and unaccused prisoner in the Bastille, that one of the bodies so sitting in judgment had risen and identified him, and that this man was Defarge. So Dr. Manette went into this tribunal, identified himself, said, I suffered in the Bastille, and Defarge concurs it. That hereupon he had ascertained through the registers on the table that his son-in-law was among the living prisoners, and had pleaded hard to the tribunal, of whom some members were asleep and some awake, some dirty with murder and some clean, some sober and some not, for the life and liberty, for his life and liberty. So he begs before this tribunal of this, I don't know what word I'm looking for, like very different. Like you got some drunk and some sober, some covered in blood, some clean, old, young, awake, sleepy. You've got all this ramshackle group of judges. And he goes before this tribunal to say, hey, you know me, I'm an honorable guy in France. I paid my dues. Now you've got my son-in-law. Can we be fair to him for the sake of me? Of whom some member, no, I read that in the first frantic greetings lavished on himself as a notable sufferer under the overthrown system, it had been accorded to him to have Charles Darnay brought before the lawless court and examined. That he seemed on the point of being at once released when the tide in his favor met with some unexplained check, not intelligible to the doctor, which led to a few words of secret conference. That the man sitting as president and had informed Dr. Manette that the prisoner must remain in custody, but should, for his sake, be held inviolate and safe custody. That immediately, on a signal, the prisoner was removed to the interior of the prison again, but that he, the doctor, had then so strongly pleaded for permission to remain and assure himself that his son-in-law was, through no malice or mischance, delivered to the concourse whose murderous yells outside the gate had often drowned the proceedings, that he obtained the permission and had remained in that hall of blood until the danger was over. So Manette was very, very cool and calm. He didn't return to that frightened old man that didn't speak, and he went to protect his son-in-law. The sights he had seen there, with brief snatches of food and sleep by intervals, shall remain untold. The mad joy over the prisoners who were saved had astounded him scarcely less than the mad ferocity against those who were cut to pieces. One prisoner there was, he said, who had been discharged into the street free, but at whom a mistaken savage had thrust a pike as he passed out. So one guy got out. They said, okay, you are innocent. You can go. And the mob killed him mistakenly. But at whom, no, But at home, a mistaken savage. No, I just read that. Being besought to go to him and dress the wound, the doctor had passed out at the same gate and had found him in the arms of a company of Samaritans who were seated on the bodies of their victims. With an inconsistency as monstrous as anything in this awful nightmare, they had helped the healer and tended the wounded man with the gentlest solicitude, had made a litter for him, a pallet, a litter for him, and escorted him carefully from the spot, had then caught upon their weapons and plunged anew into a butchery so dreadful that the doctor had covered his eyes with his hands and swooned away in the midst of it. So it's just carnage. It's just bloodthirsty, out of control, angry, vengeful mob. And Dr. Manette was there. Remember, he's a doctor. He was trying to lend medical services, but he passes out from it. It's just so horrid to him. In Tunisia, when you drink, they say Saha. So I say Saha to myself. As Mr. Lorry received these confidences and as he watched the face of his friend, now 62 years of age, a misgiving arose within him that such dread experiences would revive the old danger. But he had never seen his friend in his present aspect. He had never at all known him in this present character. For the first time, the doctor felt now that his suffering was strength and power. For the first time, he felt that in that sharp fire, he had slowly forged the iron which could break the prison door of his daughter's husband and deliver him. All that suffering he went through, the doctor, all that time in prison, it made him internally strong. And he, in the midst of all this horrid, bloodthirsty chaos, he draws on that strength from what he got in those years in the prison, because he's going to protect his daughter from the fate that his wife went through. He's going to get her husband back to him. I mean, you can see the cycle returning. Lucy, his daughter, is reliving what his own wife, her mother, had gone through. And her father, Dr. Manette, is like, dang it, no, I didn't suffer, and my wife didn't suffer for this to happen again. He's going to do everything he can to fight it. I read that. It all tended to a good end, my friend. It was not mere waste and ruin. As my beloved child was helpful in restoring me to myself, I will be helpful now in restoring the dearest part of herself to her. By the aid of heaven, I will do it. Thus, Dr. Manette, that's an interesting sentence. And when Jarvis Lorry saw the kindled eyes, the resolute face, the calm, strong look and bearing of the man whose life always seemed to him to have been stopped like a clock for so many years and then set going again with an energy which had lain dormant during the cessation of its usefulness, he believed. Greater things than the doctor had at that time to contend with would have yielded before his persevering purpose. While he kept himself in his place as a physician whose business was with all degrees of mankind, bond and free, rich and poor, bad and good, he used his personal influence so wisely that he was soon the inspecting physician of 3 prisons, and among them of La Force. He could now assure Lucy that her husband was no longer confined alone, but was mixed with the general body of prisoners. He saw her husband weekly and brought sweet messages to her straight from his lips. Sometimes her husband himself sent a letter to her, though never by the doctor's hand. But she was not permitted to write to him, for among the many wild suspicions of plots in the prisons, the wildest of all pointed at immigrants who were known to have made friends or permanent connections abroad. So she can't communicate, but she can't write back. So time has passed. The doctor has gotten himself established as a physician to the prisoners, and he's become entrusted to these revolutionaries. But with all that trust, Lucy can't communicate with her. I mean, she can hear from her husband, but she can't write back. This new life of the doctor's was an anxious life, no doubt. Still, the sagaces, if you've been with me a long time, sagaces, I can't say wise is what it means. It's such a hard word for me. Let's see pronunciation. Sagacious. How to pronounce. Sagacious. That's why I can't say it. It's a hard G. Thank you. Thank you, Google. Sagacious. Maybe that makes you guys feel better if you stumble across a word. I mean, there's no way to know every word and pronounce every word, but you see what I did? I said, oh, I don't think I'm saying that right. Let me see how to say it. And if you know your dictionary app, all I did was, oh, there's the color. Where's the color? All I did was Google the word. It came up here and you see there's an icon or it says learn to pronounce. So you just click it. Everything's there for you. You don't even have to know how to read the phonetic writing. So, don't be shy about learning how to say. I mean, we can't remember every single word. So sagacious means white. And it's from the word sage. So I thought the G was soft. So that was helpful for me to learn. Maybe now I will remember it next time. And where did my sagacious go? The sagacious Mr. Lorry saw that there was a new sustaining pride in it. Nothing unbecoming tinged the pride. It was a natural and worthy one, but he observed it as a curiosity. The doctor knew that up to that time, his imprisonment had been associated in the minds of his daughter and his friend with his personal affliction, deprivation, and weakness. Now that this was changed and he knew himself to be invested through that old trial with forces to which he both looked for Charles's ultimate safety and deliverance, he became so far exalted by the change that he took the lead and direction and required them as the weak to trust to him as the strong. The preceding relative positions of himself and Lucy were reversed. Yet only as the liveliest gratitude and affection could reverse them, for he could have had no pride but in rendering some service to her who had rendered so much to him. Rendering is giving. All curious to see, thought Mr. Lorry in his amiable, shrewd way, but all natural and right. So take the lead, my dear friend, and keep it. It couldn't be in better hands. So this is Mr. Lorry's thoughts on, is this safe? Is my friend okay? And he begins to calm in the storm, begin to see, okay, Dr. Manette's not going to freak back and go back to his old ways. He seems to be holding up really well. Bowen Gordon, hello. But though the doctor tried hard and never ceased trying to get Charles Darnay set at liberty, or at least to get him brought to trial, the public current of the time got set too strong and too fast for him. The new era began. The king was tried, doomed, and beheaded. So that is part of history. So this is where that historical fiction comes in. So we know Louis was executed by the guillotine. Declared for victory or death against the world in arms, the black flag waved night and day from the great towers of Notre Dame. 300,000 men, summoned to rise against the tyrants of the earth, rose from all the varying soils of France, as if the dragon's teeth had been sown broadcast, and had yielded fruit equally on hill and plain, on rock and gravel and alluvial mud, under the bright sky of the south and under the clouds of the north, in fell and forest, in the vineyards and the olive grounds, and among the cropped grass and the stubble of the corn, along the fruitful banks of the broad rivers and in the sand of the seashore. What private solicitude could rear itself against the deluge of the year one of liberty, the deluge rising from below, not falling from above, and with the windows of heaven shut, not open. So we have another statement here of Dickens. He's making a political statement, and he's, all that is of everyone in France from every walk of life is what he's just described in depth there. There was no pause, no pity, no peace, no interval of relenting rest, no measurement of time, though days and nights circled as regularly as when time was young, and the evening and morning were the first day. Another count of time there was none. Hold of it was lost in the raging fever of a nation, as it is in the fever of one patient. Now, breaking the unnatural silence of a whole city, the executioner showed the people the head of the king, and now, it seemed almost in the same breath, the head of his fair wife, which had had 8 weary months of imprisoned widowhood and misery to turn it gray. So this is the execution of the King of France, Louis, and the Queen of France, Marie Antoinette. This is the reference that Dickens is making without naming them. But I'm curious, why not name them? Is it supposed to all stay fictionalized? So he's saying this is all just fiction, so I'm not identifying any names, or is it just because it's so well known he didn't need to name them? It's not important, but those are the kinds of things I kind of stop and ponder about when I read. Why not just say Louis and Marie? I guess maybe it's more dramatic. And yet, observing the strange law of contradiction, which obtains in all such cases, the time was long, while it flamed by so fast, a revolutionary tribunal in the capital, and 40 or 50,000 revolutionary committees all over the land, a law of the suspected, which struck away all security for life, liberty, or life, and delivered over any good and innocent person to any bad and guilty one. Persons gorged with people who had committed no offense and could obtain no hearing. These things became the established order and nature of appointed things, and seemed to be ancient usage before they were many weeks old. Above all, one hideous figure grew as familiar as if it had been before the general gaze from the foundations of the world, the figure of the sharp female called La Guillotine. So again, Dickens is making his commentary, and he's talking about how the pain that this whole society of the revolutionaries, of the citizens, it was so great, it just turned into this evil. Their retribution was so bloodthirsty, and the only thing that really took lead if you study, people just started. If I was mad at my neighbor, my anger was so great, they turned on everybody in their community, and just person after person after person is guillotined. And so he's saying that's what is taking presence in the French Revolution, Madame la Guillotine, that personification of the blade. It was a popular theme for jests. It was the best cure for headache. It infallibly prevented the hair from turning gray. That's la guillotine. It cut your head off before it could turn gray. It imparted a peculiar delicacy to the complexion. It was the national razor which shaved close. Who kissed la guillotine, looked through the little window, and sneezed into the sack. It was a sign. Oh, that's an interesting picture. You kiss the guillotine, the blade, and sneeze, because now your head's separated, and it rolls into a sack that's collected and sneezes into the sack. So if you had started the sneeze as the guillotine was coming, the sneeze would be finished in the sack. What imagery there is there. It was a sign of the regeneration of the human race. It superseded the cross. That's a reference to Christianity. Models of it were worn on breasts from which the cross was discarded, and it was bowed down to and believed in where the cross was denied. So he's saying it's this country that is supposed to be based on religion, France at the time, has just been replaced. That religion, that faith has been replaced with the vengeance of la guillotine, of the blade. Lila Zornick, hello. My friend is back, who likes to come here and just randomly put, I'm going to say this where you can hear me. You come and randomly put titles. I welcomed you early and asked you to talk with me, share with me about your titles, why you want to put them. Don't just come blatantly and put book titles on, because I don't know what that means. So I don't like that. I find it disruptive. And so you're getting put in time out every time you come. Sorry. I don't know why that bothers me so much, but this same person comes in and always just puts these messages in about titles of books and authors. And I've tried to say, who are you? Why are you putting these in randomly? Are these book requests you want? You want me to read it? Am I Goodreads? What is it? No other engagement. So it just ticks me off. You get in time out. Lila, Time of the Butterflies, that was not my best read, and it took forever, didn't it? Senior year. So you're done. Does that mean you're starting college in the fall? That would be exciting. All right, almost done with this chapter, so let me forge through. It sheared off heads, so many, that it and the ground it most polluted were a rotten red. It was taken to pieces like a toy puzzle for a young devil, and was put together again when the occasion wanted it. It hushed the eloquent, struck down the powerful, abolished the good and beautiful. 22 friends of high public mark, 21 living and 1 dead. It had lopped the heads off in one morning in as many minutes. The name of the strong man of Scripture had descended to the chief functionary who worked it. But so armed, he was stronger than his namesake and blinder, and tore away the gates of God's own temple every day. Among these terrors and the brood belonging to them, the doctor walked with a steady head, confident in his power, cautiously persistent in his end, never doubting that he would save Lucy's husband at last. Yet the current of the time, so no matter how many people he saw guillotined, he's sure he can save Charles. Yet the current of the time swept by so strong and deep and carried the time away so fiercely that Charles had lain in prison 1 year and 3 months has gone by when the doctor was thus steady and confident. So much more wicked and distracted had the revolution grown in that December month that the rivers of the South were encumbered with the bodies of the violently drowned by night, and prisoners were shot in lines and squares under the southern wintry sun. Still the doctor walked among the terrors with a steady hand, no man better known than he in Paris at that day, no man in a stranger situation. Silent, humane, indispensable in hospital and prison, using his art equally among assassins and victims, he was a man apart. In the exercise of his skill, the appearance and the story of the Bastille captive removed him from all other men. He was not suspected or brought in question any more than if he had been indeed recalled to life some 18 years before, or were a spirit moving among mortals. And that is the end of chapter 4. So we see that Dr. Manette has been recalled to life and is really using his life powerfully. Lila, Global Perspectives class, first semesters, because I listened to this book in the time of the butterflies. I am good at reading books, but I am not interested in the book. Lila, I really struggled with the book and I was reading it out loud. Yeah. Going to college in Nebraska. I have to tell you something funny about me. I don't know why. I've never been to Nebraska, but whenever I want to say something is really far away or really hard to grasp, I'm like, I don't know. Like I might say, I'm trying to think how I would say it. Well, you might as well just go to Nebraska. I always choose Nebraska. I don't know why. Like, to me, Nebraska is really far from Louisiana. So it's all the way in Nebraska. Or why don't you go to Nebraska? Or so now I've met somebody from Nebraska. You're the first connection I've ever had to Nebraska. And I don't know why that's my point of saying something's really beyond my grasp or really far away. So tell me something about Nebraska, because I don't know anything about Nebraska. Normally I tell people, oh, I've been there, I've traveled there, I've done that. Or, oh, it's famous for this. I don't know anything about Nebraska. Ariana, you do not say that. Is that true? That's such a small world, because I don't know where I made it up from. It just came out of my head because it's far from Louisiana, maybe. I don't think I said it when I lived in Michigan because it wasn't that far from Michigan. The cornfields. I do love, well, now, of course, I know Omaha, but I do love some fresh out of the field corn. It is delicious. So, guys, that's 43 minutes. I'm excited that we're moving through. I still get discouraged when I look at how much more we still have to do. I don't know. We're on page, I can't see it without my glasses. We're on page 251 and we have to read to 345. So that's almost 100 more pages. I just feel like that's how I felt in the time of butterflies. I just feel like we're never going to finish it, but it's so good. And I have so many people asking me for other books because they didn't do their summer reading and they're asking at the last minute. Wuthering Heights has been requested, which I love, but I know there's no way I'm going to get to Wuthering Heights. 1984 is next. And look, it's thick too. I was thinking in my mind it was a short read. I even showed my teacher your account and she thought it was awesome. Oh, that's so great. Tell your teacher from me, thank you for the work you're doing, because I used to be a classroom teacher and now I work for our Department of Education in the state. And I so respect what teachers are doing during the pandemic. So if there's any way, and I try to offer to every teacher out there, if anything I do on my reading channel would be helpful in your classroom, if you want me to come do a live read with your classroom or a live book discussion with your classroom, I don't charge anything. I don't monetize it. Just love teaching. I love education. I've done some things with classrooms and breakout sessions where everybody was doing, home study when everything was online. And that was really fun for me to get to do that. So Lila, and you can contact me on my Instagram, Best Tutor Friend, and you can message me. And I'm very sincere in that offer, if y'all can understand my Southern accent. So, and I did never teach in the Time of the Butterflies. So I'm not well versed in that book. I learned a lot about the history from it. It was not my favorite book. I liked the story. I got bogged down, as you know, if you read it with me, in all the characters. I had trouble distinguishing them from one another. I had trouble. There was just a lot of words to it, and the plot got convoluted. And I mean, I know it was based on a real story, but like introducing the infidelity of the father and then that second family, it just didn't feel like it all got tied back together. And then all the chronological jumps from modern time to the sister who lived back to the time of everything happening. I just struggled with it a lot. And one of my regular viewers, Dinah, indicated to me, and she's probably right because she read it straight through, and she commented to me that I think I struggled with it because it took me so long to get through it, and I was reading several other books at the same time. So it was hard to focus and I lost track. Lila, I feel that. I understand that. So, I hope you have a great freshman year. And do you know what you're going to study yet? Are you doing general studies? Are you undeclared, undecided? Because if you don't know, like if you really know, I want to be a doctor, I want to be an engineer. If you really know, then that's great. But if you don't know, like what, everything's just general courses at the beginning. My trick is when you go into a field, if you think that's something you want to study, go look at the course schedule of what you would take freshman year, first semester, freshman year, second semester, sophomore year, and all the courses you actually take. And every university posts that. And then that helps you better decide if that's what you want to study, because then you see all the classes you have to take. Mechanical engineering. Oh, that's very specific, to be a automotive engineer for Tesla. That's exciting. I'm impressed. I don't know if there really truly are mechanical engineers anymore, because everything's so electronic. Back in the day, you really had engines that came apart, and now it's all run by computers. So is mechanical engineering more computer engineering now? I'm very curious about that. I drive a 11-year-old Kia Soul standard transmission because my thinking is it has less electronic things on it. So when it breaks, the car still runs. And that's kind of what I do with all my appliances. I try and get really simple, streamed down things that are not computer boards and motherboards that have to be replaced. There's my little grown-up advice to you when you buy your own things. Buy things that you can repair and you can fix. And you don't have to be an electrical engineer to figure it out. Well, you guys, that is 48 minutes. Lila, I have so enjoyed chatting with you. Come join us on Discord. You can talk to me more, and we follow different topics and go down rabbit holes together. I am going to go play some Animal Crossing because my Schultze is a YouTuber I love to watch, and she's huge. She's a real YouTuber. I'm not a YouTuber, but I would love to tell her she's why Animal Crossing is. Where do I join? Well, let me see if I can add it. Discord. I have to get the link, and then I'll drop it into the chat. And I'm terrible at this, so this will take a minute. Invite, copy link. Now I've got to come into where I'm live on YouTube. Oh, guys, I have a new, look at my hair. I have a new question up in community. So I would love for you guys to engage with that if you can. I don't know if I can. I need to mute this. I don't know if I. Shh. Okay. That was probably annoying to y'all. Paste. Okay. The link should be coming up. Yeah, there it is. Lila, that's how you can join. And you may have to add it as an app. I'm not sure. I'm not very savvy at that. But my new question, so I was at my family book club last night and our topic was feminism. My 85-year-old dad, who knows I am very pro-feminism, and I have 3 daughters, asked the question, because every week we have a topic and then we have to bring literature and different things to that topic. Has feminism gone too far? He asked. I was crazy about that question to begin with. So we did a whole bunch of research and we did some TED Talks, and I had him read a short story by Kate Chopin that was about, it's called The Longest Day, I think, something like that. Anyway, it's a feminist piece. And he asked the question, or he seemed to believe that where the world has gone awry is that mothers, and he specifically said mothers, don't stay at home with their children. Now, my question is phrased a little bit differently than that. Oh, I'm so bad at my phone. So you can see I'm trying to get it to turn so I can get to the question. Your channel, community. The question is, after a discussion about feminism, I pose this question: are families healthier if one parent earns the money? So I tried to move away a little bit from my dad's point that it should be the wife that spends money. Because what if you're a gay couple? You know, you can't have different genders. The gender roles are not assigned there. Or what if it's, presumably all families have 2 parents, but even now, as a single woman, you can get inseminated or you can adopt and raise a child as a single parent. So I just said, are they healthier if one parent earns the money while the other parent cares for the home and kids unpaid? So, and it's just yes or no. So right now, I only have 44 votes in. I just posted it today. Normally I get 600 votes. So we'll see how many end up on it. Right now, 82% say no. They don't think they are healthier. So is that the direction your generation is going? If you are a male, are you expecting to grow up and be the supporter of and if you're a straight male and you want to marry a woman, are you expecting to grow up and be the breadwinner, the provider, and your wife stay at home and raise the children? And I directly asked my dad, would you have worked for free? And he said, absolutely not. But he didn't see the parallel that being a stay-at-home mom is agreeing to work really hard, because I did it really hard for free. So I'm curious to know your generation's look on that. Like, is this even an issue? Do you think both parents are going to be working? Do you think it's harmful if both parents are working? Do you think it's better in your family? How was it? Was your mom a stay-at-home mom? Was your dad a stay-at-home dad? Was anybody stay at home, or did everybody work, including the kids? You know, what does it take to run a family now? And is it healthy? Like, is it mentally stable? Do the children feel secure? All that kind of stuff. So go to the community page, and I don't know if you have to be a subscriber to be able to vote on the community page, but go to the community page and engage in the survey, because I like to get a sense of where teenagers are now. If you haven't subscribed, I do ask you to do that. We are growing. We're back after the summer. The summer I dropped down to so few views, and we're over 2.5 million views. That's crazy to me. That many people are coming on and reading. We have a lot of engagement on our channel. The average time watched, I think, is about 10 minutes. It varies, 9 to 10 minutes. So that means you guys are really listening to the books, and that makes me happy to know that I'm being a helpful teacher still. Some of you are already back to school, so happy school year. Some of you are still enjoying your summer, so happy summer. Keep reading, subscribe, click the bell, engage, send your questions. Ariana, yay. And I think I saw that. Ariana, did you just join Discord? I think that message popped up while I was on my phone. So I'm so glad you're going to be there. And I do, just so you know, I usually on Discord, I try to make it a habit that I let y'all know, like on Tale of Two Cities, I said I'm going in to read again tonight. So I give you about a 5-minute heads up that, hey, I'm about to go read live. And I'll answer homework questions. You know, you'll see all the channels. There's a lot of channels, and that might be overwhelming. But just look through and see if there's a book that you want to ask. There's a mental health channel where we talk about good mental health. We get some good book suggestions. We get some good movie watching suggestions. So just come and engage with us. We really are a community of readers, and it's really a lovely family. Like, so far, I've not had to have any unpleasant experiences or, break up any rude talk. Everybody's just very thoughtful in what they want to say and helps us learn, talk about SAT and ACT scoring, test scores, test preparation, that kind of thing. So it's a fun group of nerds pretty much, but nerds rule the world. Lila says it would depend on the family and the circumstances. I totally agree with you, such as their values and what they believe. I believe it's based on a family's personal opinion. I think that's true too. I think that it still bothers me. My dad would have rather because I've been a career mom my whole life, and I have 5 kids. So I can understand his point. And there were a lot of times my kids were not as clean as they should be, did not have the clothes they needed or the school supplies they needed, or the food, the well-cooked meals that they needed. They might've had a mom who was a little stressed out or preoccupied with her own career. And I can see the downside of that. And to add to that, for the most part, I was a single mom most of the time I was raising my kids. So I understand his point. And in a perfect world, you've got a happy at-home mom. You've got a happy provisional father, if that's a stereotypical same-sex family. I mean, different sex parents. How do I want to say that? But in the world we live in, as you say, Lila, it just depends on the, ironically, I can see my parents' wedding picture behind me. So it just depends on who you are and what your goals in life are. As an educator, I've just seen so many children. I've seen children whose mom was a stay-at-home mom. They were very affluent, and the children were very neglected. The mom was caught up in her tennis and her, crafting and her junior league or whatever mission she was involved in. And she didn't engage with her kids at all. She was really busy on social media and posting things. And as a teacher, I've seen a lot of children really hungry for the attention of either of their parents, whether it was the overworking father. And I have to be honest, I didn't have many same-sex parents in the time that I taught. I think that'll change as generations change. Our age groups modernize. They want to be active and in the workforce. I tend to agree with that, Lila. I didn't see, Lila, your comment, but to me, I would want both parents working, but I do understand where your dad's coming from. I'm just not the stay-at-home type. I wasn't either. And I don't think teenagers my age would want to be at home. I loved my career. I love my children. I'm still super involved in my children's lives. They were really a priority to me, and I hope they felt like they were a priority to me. But again, my house was not the cleanest house on the block. There was not a real routine. It was very scattered. Like, what you see on here of me is what you get. I'm, ADD and bouncing all over the place. And, like, if they knew the rule, if they knew a project was coming up, and as a teacher, I tried to do this too. If there was a project that needed poster board or needed some kind of supplies, they knew they better get it to me on the weekend, because I was not going out on the weekday when I had to work. Then you just do without it. I mean, there were different rules when you were a mother that was working. Is that better or worse? I don't know. You'd have to ask my kids. But I'm curious to know about your generation. And Lila, thank you. That was a thoughtful response. I appreciate it. So I've experienced both, so it all depends. I didn't see that part, Ariana. You've had both parents you've had a parent stay at home and a parent work, and you've had both parents working, and you're not sure which one was better for you. Is that what you mean, Ariana? And I think that does. I think it depends on how happy, to me, I think it depends on how happy the parents are. Like, if the parent's working and hates it, then they're grumpy. If the parent's staying at home and hate it, then they're grumpy. I mean, the worst thing is you don't want to have parents that are grumpy. You want to have parents that are happy to be with you as their parent, and happy to be in the home, and happy to be at work. And unfortunately, it's very expensive to live now, and it does take 2 parents a lot of times, but I think it goes beyond that too. Well, now with the pandemic, and I live alone now, so I find, like I say, I don't want pets, just so you know, but Animal Crossing and But I still have a career that I love. It's not teaching, but I really love the career. I love the work that I'm doing. And I would have been sad if I hadn't been able to pursue my passions of teaching and education. My family was born in a different country and they were refugees. So naturally, everyone in my family, yeah. God bless you, Lila. That's my kid's dad. He came from Iran as I'm going to say 30-year-old and didn't know English and has worked. I really respect him. He has worked his tail off. He is very successful, was a good provider. But it was very hard for him to come from, and then, all the conflict with Iran and the United States. So as an immigrant, there were many prejudices I saw him face. He had language barrier to do what he's done in this country and to be as successful as he is. I respect that. And so a lot of the time I was working in the family business. And in essence, I could come and go to some extent because it was a family business. So Lila, I really, really thank you for sharing that. And kudos to you and your family for that change. So that means you're bilingual, or did you lose the language were you born here? And you don't have to answer any of that if you don't want to. Oh, Lila, that's a really sweet thing to say. Thank you for that. I just think that this is a great community, and that's why I enjoy doing it. It really keeps me fulfilled and happy. Bosnia, born and raised. Okay, you are bilingual. See, my children, their dad didn't speak Farsi to them. So I tried to learn it and tried to teach it when we homeschooled. But if you're not fluent in it, it's very hard to teach a language. So my kids, unfortunately, don't speak Farsi, but my granddaughter is but is around all the time. Her grandfather and his new wife, who is Iranian, so she speaks Farsi. So my granddaughter, I hope, is going to be able to be bilingual. I can't remember the title of the book about the girl in Bosnia, and it was really, really big, and it was a really powerful book. And I'm going to draw a complete blank. I just wonder if you ever read it. Arabic in your prayers. Well, assalamu alaikum. And English in school. I think as an educator, I think being bilingual is so important. And you're able to read Arabic, or you just know the prayers by heart. Because I can read Farsi and Arabic. I just don't know what the words mean. So I know the letters. And I know I used to could recite the Bismillah, but I haven't. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. I have like bits and pieces, Maliki, Ahmadine. I can't do it anymore, but I used to know the prayers. But you lose them if you don't keep up, especially when they're not in your own language. I understand that because in Iran, they speak Farsi, but of course they pray in Arabic too. I just don't remember the prayer anymore. But being married to a Muslim, I learned the prayers and would pray with them. And they're beautiful. I have a lot of respect for Islam. And I think a lot of Westerners misunderstand Islam. For years and years, I think for 9 years, I observed Ramadan, and I thought it was really a healthy thing. So God bless your family. I hope you guys have continued success. And, I think we just had the Islamic New Year not too long ago. Wasn't it like last week or something? Or am I wrong about that? I lose track because I'm not with anybody now that is Muslim. So sorry about that sidebar of conversation. I really wish I could remember the name of the book. Let me see if I'm going to search youth book, Bosnia. Let's see. Of course, I came out tooth book because I can't. No. I'm not seeing it. My Childhood Under Fire, no. Nope. Do Did you read it in school? Because I mean, you're obviously, well, you may still be in school. Girl, I can't. Book about Bosnian girl. Let's see. Zlata's Diary. That's it. See it? Have you read that one? Are you familiar with that one? I don't know that I ever actually read it. I just remember reading a lot about it. 1992. So if there's something you're looking for to read, there it is. All right, guys, I've stayed on an hour. I never keep a reading this long, but the end, I mean, we got the reading done, and I will change the title to say that it's chapter 3 and 4. Yay, us. You guys have a great evening, and I will read to you next time. See ya.